Hey guys, it's Ellie. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad to have you with me. So, if you've never been here before, this is just a podcast where I read through one chapter of the Book of Mormon each episode, and I give a little bit of context, a little bit of insight, a little bit of good times, so stick around. So, if you remember last episode, we read Mosiah chapter 18, in which Alma starts his ministry. He's a new convert. Abinadi convinced him of the wickedness of his ways, and he left. He ran away from the city, and he got a bunch of followers, and he baptized hundreds of people, and by the end of the chapter, he had 450 followers in the span of one chapter. He's crazy. And now King Noah is sending his armies against the movement that Alma began. So let's see how that goes for them. So yeah, without further ado, let's begin reading Mosiah chapter 19. And it came to pass that the army of the king returned, having searched in vain for the people of the Lord. And now behold, the forces of the king were small, having been reduced, and there began to be a division among the remainder of the people. And the lesser part began to breathe out threatenings against the king, and there began to be a great contention among them. And there was a man among them whose name was Gideon, and he being a strong man, and an enemy to the king, therefore he drew his sword, and swore in his wrath that he would slay the king. So it sounds like there are people pushing back against King Noah attacking Alma and his people. There is a, quote, lesser part of the people that are breathing out threatenings against the king, and one of them is named Gideon, and he has a chip on his shoulder. He is swearing to kill King Noah, which is really big. So let's see how successful Gideon is, shall we? And it came to pass that he fought with the king, and when the king saw that he was about to overpower him, he fled and ran and got upon the tower which was near the temple. And Gideon pursued after him, and was about to get upon the tower to slay the king, and the king cast his eyes round about towards the land of Shemlon, and behold, the army of the Lamanites were within the borders of the land. And now the king cried out in the anguish of his soul, saying, Gideon, spare me, for the Lamanites are upon us, and they will destroy us, yea, and they will destroy my people. And now the king was not so much concerned about his people as he was about his own life. Nevertheless, Gideon did spare his life. So this is another example of King Noah being such a huge coward. Like, Gideon faces King Noah in battle, it sounds like, and when he starts to lose, King Noah, instead of, letting him win or having any honor, he just runs. He runs away to the top of a tower. I don't know if that's the greatest strategy for trying to escape from someone, to go to somewhere that is inherently a dead end, unless you can fly, but regardless, Gideon was about to murder King Noah, and yet King Noah was like, oh, look, the Lamanites are attacking. We need to go stop them. And instead of saying that out of the concern for his people, he says it as a way to get out of Gideon's clutches. He says it as a way to get Gideon away from him so he can run away again. Because, again, he backed himself into a corner by climbing a tower, which is not the smartest of ideas. So yeah, King Noah is not worried about his people. The Lamanites are bringing their armies towards their people, and he uses it as a way to escape death, instead of as an actual alarming concern for his people that are going to be attacked by their enemies. Like, he's not thinking about the fact that probably hundreds of his people will die today. He's thinking about the fact that he won't die today, and that's all he cares about. So that sort of selfishness is another, check on the list of what not to do, as learned from King Noah. So yeah, this is just such a clear example of, King Noah being such a coward, and being so self-centered that he will sacrifice potentially hundreds of his own people just for his own self-preservation. And the king commanded the people that they should flee before the Lamanites, and he himself did go before them, and they did flee into the wilderness with their women and their children. And it came to pass that the Lamanites did pursue them, and did overtake them, and began to slay them. Now it came to pass that the king commanded them that all the men should leave their wives and their children, and flee before the Lamanites. Now there were many that would not leave them, but had rather stay and perish with them, and the rest left their wives and their children, and fled. So not only is King Noah so vastly underprepared for a Lamanite attack that the only response that he can really give is for everyone to run away. That's not only an example of his cowardice, once again, but also an example of his just underpreparedness. Like, maybe all of his focus, all of the funding that he gets from taxes goes towards supporting his lifestyle instead of, building walls or building a army for defense or building, fortifications to their city so it can't so easily be taken over by Lamanites. But no, it seems that he didn't do that. And he just has everyone run. In fact, he even orders the men to leave their families and run. Why would you do that? Is it because the women and the children are slower and would slow you down and potentially make it so you can't run away from the Lamanites? Oh my gosh, King Noah, what in the world are you doing? This is not the way to do it, my good sir. Don't force your people to abandon their families in order to live. Just because you don't have any honor doesn't mean that no one else has any honor. Jeez. And the fact that some did stay with their families and some did leave shows that the people weren't all super wicked. And even in the beginning of the chapter, it says there was a division among the people. So now people are beginning to realize, oh, King Noah is actually a terrible, terrible king. And now they're maybe not believers, but at least people that don't like King Noah. So now, we're seeing the fracturing of their people. How in the beginning it was mentioned that there was a contention because King Noah was sending armies against the people of Alma, and now we see that some people went against King Noah's direct orders and stayed in the city to potentially die with their families, and another chunk of people left and followed his orders, So King Noah's people, they're not one thing, they're not just wicked. They are their own person, and they all make different decisions, even though their king is so terrible. So obviously there are some people that have honor and that care about their family. And so it's kind of cool to see those small details of the fact that, not everyone was the same, There's a little bit of political tension happening because of the chaos that King Noah is bringing to the city. So, yeah, it's kind of cool. And I have massive, huge respect for the husbands and the fathers that decided to stay back and just weather the storm with their family, to potentially even die with their family, because they will not abandon them. That takes a huge amount of guts. So good job, I guess. Thousands of years after the fact, you get a little pat on the back. And it came to pass that those who tarried with their wives and their children caused that their fair daughters should stand forth and plead with the Lamanites that they would not slay them. And it came to pass that the Lamanites had compassion on them, for they were charmed with the beauty of their women. Therefore the Lamanites did spare their lives, and took them captives, and carried them back to the land of Nephi, and granted unto them that they might possess the land, under the conditions that they would deliver up King Noah into the hands of the Lamanites, and deliver up their property, even 1/2 of all they possessed, 1/2 of all their gold, and their silver, and all their precious things, and thus they should pay tribute to the king of the Lamanites from year to year. So now we're getting closer and closer to the point where the Nephites met up with the people in Zarahemla, Nephi, not Zarahemla, and basically learned about their condition, because now King Noah is promised to be delivered to the Lamanites, and now, King Noah's people are going to be forced to pay 1/2 of everything to the Lamanites, which is exactly the state that King Limhi's nation is in when they are found a few chapters ago. It is King Noah's son that becomes the next king. In fact, in the very next verse that I haven't even read yet, he's mentioned. And they're stuck paying tributes to the Lamanites. And we're seeing now how this happened. And again, you know how much I love background information and backstory. This is basically the backstory of the state that the Nephites found these people in. We met them, and then we went back in time to see how they got to this point. And we're seeing more specifics now. We're getting closer and closer to, present day, where now they're under tribute. Now, King Noah is either going to be given to the Lamanites or killed, which, hint, he gets killed by fire, like Abinadi said he would. And they're stuck paying these tributes. It's just cool to see how it all comes together, and exactly what blunders the people did that caused all of this to happen, and the very specific stupidities of King Noah, which, as we've established, King Noah is the worst. Let's just put it that way. And now there was one of the sons of the king among those that were taken captive, whose name was Limhi. And now Limhi was desirous that his father should not be destroyed. Nevertheless, Limhi was not ignorant of the iniquities of his father, he himself being a just man. And it came to pass that Gideon sent men into the wilderness secretly to search for the king and those that were with him. And it came to pass that they met the people in the wilderness, all save the king and his priests. Now they had sworn in their hearts that they would return to the land of Nephi, and if their wives and their children were slain, and also those that had tarried with them, that they should seek revenge, and also perish with them. And the king commanded them that they should not return, and they were angry with the king, and caused that he should suffer, even unto death by fire. So that is how King Noah dies. He's killed by his own people on the stake, just like Abinadi was. In fact, just like Abinadi prophesied King Noah would be. He said that, things that you do to me, it will be a type and a shadow of things to come. And in this case, it was very literal. The way that they burned Abinadi to death was exactly what happened to King Noah. It's so cool to see the prophecy and the fulfillment happen so close. I've mentioned this before. It's super cool. But yeah, so the people that left their wives and their children to follow King Noah into the desert have second thoughts. They're like, wait a minute, this is terrible. I actually want to go back. I think the people that stayed with their families had the right idea. Why are we here? Especially once King Noah said, no, you cannot return to your families, even after a little bit of being in the desert. And then they got angry, and then they killed him. In fact, they burned him at the stake, just like Abinadi, which is so poetic. And alas, Gideon himself did not get King Noah's blood on his hands, but King Noah was killed, so I'm sure Gideon was happy regardless of whether or not he was the one to kill him. And they were about to take the priests also and put them to death, and they fled before them. And it came to pass that they were about to return to the land of Nephi, and they met the men of Gideon. And the men of Gideon told them of all that had happened to their wives and their children, and that the Lamanites had granted unto them that they might possess the land by paying a tribute to the Lamanites of 1/2 of all they possessed. And the people told the men of Gideon that they had slain the king, and his priests had fled from them farther into the wilderness. And it came to pass that after they had endured the ceremony, that they returned to the land of Nephi, rejoicing because their wives and their children were not slain, and they told Gideon what they had done to the king. And it came to pass that the king of the Lamanites made an oath unto them, that his people should not slay them. And also Limhi, being the son of the king, having the kingdom conferred upon him by the people, made oath unto the king of the Lamanites that his people should pay tribute unto him, even 1/2 of all they possessed. And it came to pass that Limhi began to establish the kingdom and to establish peace among his people. So Limhi is breaking the chain of wicked kings that we'd had, and the chain being only one link long because it was just King Noah, but he is breaking the traditions that his father set in place. He is establishing peace among his people. In fact, he's even allowing the Lamanite tributes to go through just as a way to preserve his people instead of lengthening out the conflict, which would be an extremely uneven conflict too, because it seems like King Noah and Limhi's people don't really have an army to speak of, and what army they do have is really small and underprepared. So I think that King Limhi could have said, no, we won't pay you tributes, instead we're going to fight back. But he understood that the lives of his people were more important than whatever pride they had about not paying tributes to the Lamanites. But this is an interesting juxtaposition to the choices that Noah would have made, because Noah just ran away. He just ran away from the problem. He didn't try and face it. He didn't try and do anything with it. King Limhi, his son, is the one that makes the choice, okay, even though this is technically the more cowardly option just to take the tribute deal with the Lamanites, it is preserving the people. And I think he did it to preserve his people. Because, like I said, the alternative is fighting a losing battle, which maybe King Noah would have tried, although more likely he probably would have just continued running away and just let the city be completely taken. Even though King Limhi is making a little bit of a cowardly choice, it is, one, not as cowardly as his dad's just running away, and two, it's for the sake of his people. It's not, like, really cowardly, because he's doing it so that the entire army and potentially the rest of their city aren't killed or captured. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see, even so early on in his kingship, how King Limhi deals with his people and how much he cares about his people. So much more than his own father did, because his own father was fully willing to completely abandon them for his own self-preservation. Because King Noah is a terrible person, in case you weren't aware of that yet. And the king of the Lamanites set guards round about the land, that he might keep the people of Limhi in the land, that they might not depart into the wilderness, and he did support his guards out of the tribute which he did receive from the Nephites. And now King Limhi did have continual peace in his kingdom for the space of 2 years, that the Lamanites did not molest them, nor seek to destroy them. So now we've gone from focusing solely on Alma and his teachings and the little following he's created to the wider, like, King Noah's politics, like the drama that's happening with King Noah himself and the attacking armies and his son succeeding him once King Noah is killed in the desert. But one thing to note is that the priests are still unaccounted for. The wicked priests are still somewhere in the desert. They ran away from being killed, and now they can't be found. That's another loose thread that will have to get tied up at some point, because those priests are, well, wicked. So who knows what they're gonna do. We know that they're not good people. We know that they have no integrity. We know that they will preach false doctrine if it gets them money or attention, or both. So, yeah. We'll see what happens with that. But now we're nearly to the present day. We're nearly to the point where the Nephites found King Limhi and his kingdom in the state that they were in. Don't you think, as King Limhi enters his kingship, do you think that he would be a little bit, like, grossed out by the fact that his people are paying for the very guards that are keeping them in their lands. Wouldn't that feel a little bit gross? Especially as a king. Like, you're the one that's supposed to be protecting your people. You're the one that's supposed to be making, your people's futures better, or at least more secure, and you can't do either. If I were Limhi, I would feel trapped and frustrated because you can't fight back, because your army is so absurdly small, and I'm sure the Lamanites would stop you from creating a bigger army. They would probably attack you out of fear of you attacking them. Limhi is stuck in such a stupid situation. He inherited a broken kingdom that his father caused, and he can't do anything to fix it. I would be so frustrated. I would be angry. But also, I would be reflective. I would be like, what happened to get us to this point? And that is why, by the time that the Nephites get to their kingdom, Limhi is so reflective on how their previous sins, how their killing of Abinadi led to the situation that they're in right now. Anyways, Limhi is really cool, and I kind of feel so bad for him because he didn't do anything wrong. From what I can tell, he's a great king, and he cares about his people, but he inherited his kingdom at the worst possible time, when the kingdom was stuck in a corner, and now they're paying the Lamanites to keep them in that corner, to keep them stuck. Oh my goodness, that would be exceedingly frustrating. The stand-up verse is going to be verse 14 and the beginning of verse 15, which I'm going to read. It says, "And it came to pass that the Lamanites had compassion on them, for they were charmed with the beauty of their women. Therefore the Lamanites did spare their lives, and took them captives, and carried them back to the land of Nephi." So this is what happened when the people that stayed in the land basically put their women on the front lines to plead with the Lamanites, basically banking on the fact that the Lamanites wouldn't kill a woman who was unarmed and pleading with them. Like, come on, you wouldn't do that, which is a crazy tactic to try. But that really shows how desperate they were. Like, they were hopeless. They had no defenses other than their women, putting them on the front lines to fish for empathy. That is crazy. But you know what's crazier? It worked. Even though they were eventually put under tributes by the Lamanites, they were all spared. From what we can read in the text, not one of these people were killed, even though they were left completely defenseless by their own king, and a lot of their husbands and fathers. They lived because they tried this crazy strategy that happened to work. In fact, remember how I mentioned how, in two separate parts of the chapter, it's implied that there were kind of factions happening in the kingdom, where there was one smaller part of the kingdom in the very beginning of the chapter that didn't like how King Noah was attacking the people of Alma. Those people were likely believers who were either one of Alma's followers or wanted to be one of Alma's followers, or at the very least were sympathetic to his cause. I think that there was a lot of overlap between the people that were believers and that small faction in the beginning of the chapter to the people that decided to go against King Noah's orders and stay with their families in the city. And so I think that a lot of the people that were left in the city were believers, were people that had at least some faith in God. And so I think that it was their faith and their, sheer blind trust that things would be okay, and their willingness to try a desperate measure that things worked out the way they did. I genuinely don't think that it would have been as good of an outcome if there was not a single believer in the city. Clearly there was, because Alma had hundreds of followers. So, yeah. I guess it goes to show that, even when you see no alternatives to, the worst case scenario, even when you think that there is no way out, trusting God, follow his promptings, and do whatever you can. Because these people who stayed in the city were in an impossible situation. An angry Lamanite army was coming to attack them. They had no defenses. There was a bunch of women and children and a disproportionately small amount of men, presumably because everyone left their families and only a few men stayed. There was no true, physical defense. All they could do was put their women out in the front lines and beg for empathy. So anyways, it just struck me how crazy of a tactic that was, and how miraculous it was that it worked, and how, in fact, many of the people that stayed in the city were likely believers and likely trusted God with all of their heart. And that must have been a terrifying situation to be in, but they got through it by doing crazy things. And obviously, the ultimate outcome wasn't perfect. They're still under Lamanite tribute, but they're alive, And that is a lot better than the alternative of hundreds or even thousands of people just being slaughtered. So obviously the ultimate outcome wasn't perfect, but it was the best that they could have done given the situation. So yeah, I think that's the episode for today. Thank you so much for listening. This podcast is so much fun to make, and this chapter was crazy. It was so dramatic, with King Noah being so crazy, and the people who stayed in the city being so desperate, and King Limhi trying his best to pull together a broken kingdom. So anyways, I just want to go over a few links down in the show notes. The first one is just a quick let me know you learned link. So if you want to send me a message with whatever comment you have, whether it be feedback or a question or a comment, feel free to message me there. There's also 3 different links that show you different digital versions of the Book of Mormon, so if you want to read along and you don't have your own copy, yes you do, it's right there. There's also a quick support the show link, so if you want to shoot me a few bucks, support what I do, you can, that's available for you. And finally, we are on YouTube, so feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can even listen to the podcast there twice a week, because it does get posted there on YouTube. So yeah, that's all I got for you today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.